Chamber of Secrets is the second one, isn't
Yeah.
it? Oops.
Yeah,
Are you only reading that one, or are you gonna read?
if I'm going to commit, I'm going to commit.
Yeah.
Bring the chair over. I'm reading it to you. Can't believe I agreed to this.
Okay. Committed.
I committed, and now I'm regretting committing.
You can't regret. Once you go, you can't stop. Like if you're in the middle of a project, you can't move to a different project until that one's finished. I'd let you up here, but you'll jump down in 1 second and fall on your face.
My poor book. All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
That's my niece, so you don't, if you can hear.
Hi.
Let me just. Do I have everything? There we go. The alert box should now be active.
What does that do?
The alert box? It will alert me to anyone following.
Ah.
Like, yep. Yes, Kenzie, they can hear you. They can slightly hear you. You can talk.
I know.
Hold on, I need a.
Peter, stop eating something random off the floor. Good girl.
Yeah.
Are these a cat?
Oh, I am not allowed to read books at all on Twitch.
Why?
Because copyrighted books. And this is a copyrighted book, Kenzie. You and I know that. That's gonna kill me.
So no Harry Potter?
Hold on.
Can you read any book on?
Hold on. I gotta do research here, Kenzie. I should have done that before.
Are you allowed to read any book? You just drew that. The little panda.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you draw that. Why don't you let them see me build a house? You want to see me?
Kenzie.
Can you see me struggle?
Kenzie. I'm trying to read if I can read this book or not. Okay? So shh. Let me see if I can read the book.
But if you can't,
Rip.
can they see me through the struggle?
No.
Why?
Cause.
They watch you struggle. Why can't they watch me struggle?
Okay. George says, I think you should be fine. Should be is the word. Should be. I haven't read anything yet.
Wait, what if they find your? Would they even look at your stream?
No, but
Is their system gonna copyright you? Or is it Twitch themselves? If you read one, you have to read the other. How many copyright strikes can you get before you get? Hello.
Kenzie, I can only do one thing right now at a time.
I know, but I'm saying if you have any copyright things, can you get all the time? So you go wah wah wah. Wah 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 wah. That's a trombone that does that. Wah 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 wah. Wah 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 wah. Wah 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 wah.
So some people say yes, but I should stick with public domain books. Others says someone's reading it at the end of her stream and I think it's fine. I'm gonna get in so much trouble if it's the case. Alright, let's do it. I get in trouble, and I just take the entire whole thing down.
At least some people will get to see it.
Who ripped Nana's book of Harry Potter?
Ripped?
Yes, it's ripped.
What is ripped?
That's ripped.
Are there any pages missing?
No. But it's ripped.
It's probably me then.
Stop ripping the books.
I didn't mean to! I was reading it at night and then I guess I'm
Don't read at night. It's gonna ruin your eyesight.
reading to sleep.
Y'all don't like Harry Potter. I'm very sorry, but guess what? Niece chose the book.
I love Harry Potter! My favorite thing in the world.
You wanna hit the overlight and hit the light over there?
What?
Hit the light up there. So turn those off and then hit the light over there.
Make it dark in the sky.
Alright. Alright, you ready?
Let's do this.
When in doubt, don't we die? I'm terrified.
You're fine. Just once you get started, you won't even realize it. Can't go back now.
Point taken. I also had to let the dogs out.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. It's almost 2:30. I had to let them out.
Do you want to let him out while I read? And then come back to reading? So you won't be terrified.
I'm gonna be terrified that you're doing it.
Why?
Cause this isn't your channel.
So? It's not like
All
I
right.
don't love Harry Potter. I watch all the movies in one day.
Yeah, it's scary how she can do that. It's possible. I'll read for like 10 minutes and then I'll go let the dogs out.
And then just come back and read.
Yep.
Say the name of the chapter. The Boy Who Lived. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley.
Can I?
So, you've been terrified, so I might as
Yeah.
well start.
Yeah, I am.
You've been second guessing yourself.
Yeah. Anxiety. Gotta love that.
Start.
Okay.
Say the name of the chapter. Just say the name of the chapter.
The Boy Who Lived. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, a number 4 Pivot Drive,
Privet.
were
You said pivot.
and this is why I didn't want to read. Because me talking fast makes everything sound wrong.
Well, you said privet.
I said privet.
You said pivot, and guess
Privet.
what I thought of after you said pivot? Ross.
I said privet, but me talking fast does that.
Oh.
Privet Drive. We're proud to say they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious. Because they just didn't hold that. They just didn't hold with such nonsense. Mr. Dursley was director of a firm called Grunnings, which made drills. He's a big, beefy man with hardly any neck. Although he did have a very large mustache, Mrs. Dursley was thin.
He ain't beefy. He's a little chubby. Very chubby.
That's what beefy means, Kenzie.
No. I want to say about
Nope. Mrs. Dursley was thin and blonde and had nearly twice the usual amount of neck, which came in very useful as she spent so much of her time craning over garden fences, spying on the neighbors. The Dursley had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinions, there was no finer boy anywhere.
Oh, like Nana M. Spying over the fence.
The fence?
Oh, didn't it say fence?
The garden fences? Yeah.
Yeah, like Nana M, but she didn't stare over fences.
No, she just stares out the window.
Exactly, paying attention and being nosy. What other people are doing.
She's allowed to be nosy.
So is Nana gonna turn out nosy?
She is nosy. Just like you're nosy. Just like this entire family is nosy.
Yeah.
The Dursley had everything they wanted, but they also had a secret, and their greatest fear was that somebody would discover it. They didn't think they could bear it if anyone found out about the Potters. Mrs. Potter was Miss Dursley's sister, but they haven't met for several years. In fact, Miss Dursley pretended that she didn't have a sister, because her sister and her good-for-nothing husband were as un-Dursleyish as it was possible to be. The Dursleys shuddered to think what the neighbors would say the Potters arrived in the street. The Dursleys knew that the Potters had a small son, too, but they had never seen him. The boy was another good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing with a child like that.
Have
When
we mentioned about their
No, Kenzie. When Mr. and Mrs. Dursley woke up on the dull gray Tuesday, our story starts. There's nothing about the cloudy sky outside to suggest what strange and mysterious thing would soon be happening all over the country. Mr. Dursley hummed as he picked out his most boring tie for work. Mrs. Dursley gossiped away happily as she wrestled a screaming Dudley into his high chair. None of them noticed a large tawny owl flutter past the window. At 8:30, Mr. Dursley picked up his briefcase, pecked Mrs. Dursley on the cheek, and tried to kiss Dudley goodbye, but missed because Dudley was now having a tantrum and throwing his cereal at the walls. Little tyke, chortled Mr. Dursley. So he left the house. He got into his car, backed out of number 4 Drive. It was the corner of the street that he noticed the first sign of something particular. A cat reading a map. For a second, Mr. Dursley didn't realize what he had seen. Then he jerked his head around to look again. There was a tabby cat standing in the corner of Pivot Drive, but there wasn't a map in sight. What could he have been thinking of? Must have been a trick of the light.
Only I know what that is. And anyone who's watched Harry Potter.
Everyone knows it. Mr. Dursley blinked and stared at the cat. It stared back. As Mr. Dursley drove around the corner and up the road, he watched the cat in his mirror. It was now reading the sign that said Pivot Drive. No, looking at the sign. Cats couldn't read maps or signs. Mr. Dursley gave himself a little shake, put the cat out of his mind. As he drove towards town, he thought of nothing except a large order of drills he was hoping to get that day. But on the edge of town, drills were driven out of his mind by something else. As sad as the usual morning traffic jam, he couldn't help notice that there seemed to be a lot of strangely dressed people about. People in cloaks. Mr. Dursley couldn't bear people dressed in fun clothes. The get-ups he saw in young people. He supposed this was some stupid new fashion. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, and his eyes fell on a huddle of these weirdos standing quite close by. They were whispering excitedly together. Mr. Dursley was enraged to see that a couple of them weren't young at all. Why, the man had to be older than he was, wearing an emerald green cloak. The nerve of him. Then it struck Mr. Dursley this was probably some silly stunt. These people were obviously collecting for something. Yes, that would be it. The traffic moved on, and a few minutes later, Mr. Dursley arrived in the Gunnings parking lot, his mind back on dress. Mr. Dursley always sat with his back to the window in his office on the 9th floor. If he hadn't, he might have found it harder to concentrate on drills that morning. He didn't see the owls swooping past in broad daylight. The people down in the streets did. They pointed and gazed open-mouthed as owl after owl sped overhead. Most of them had never seen an owl, even at night time. Mr. Dursley, however, had a perfectly normal owl-free morning. He yelled at 5 different people, he made several important telephone calls, and shouted a bit more. He was in a very good mood until lunchtime, when he thought he'd stretch his legs and walk across the road to buy himself a bun from the bakery. He'd forgotten all about the people in cloaks until he passed a group of them next to the baker's. He eyed them angrily as he passed. He didn't know why. They made him uneasy. This bunch were whispering excitedly, too. He couldn't see a single collecting tin. So on his way back past them, clutching a large donut in his bag, then he caught a few words of what they were saying. The Potters, that's right. That's what I heard. Yes, their son Harry. Mr. Dursley stopped dead. Fear flooded him. He looked back at the whispers as if he wanted to say something to them, but thought better of it. He dashed across the road, hurried up to his office, snapped at his secretary not to disturb him, seized his cell phone, and had almost finished dialing his home phone when he changed his mind. He put the receiver back down. Ah! Hi, Shadow Preach. I wasn't really paying attention as I was reading.
Who dat?
It's a person. He's heading to sleep. I wanted to stop by to say hi. And say hi to you.
Hi.
And high five. Okay. It's a person that'll follow me. See? Oh!
What? You almost
Shadow Preach is a psychic, not a person.
Huh? I don't care.
You don't care.
No, I'm gonna call by their username.
Okay.
Yeah, blah blah. Socks.
Yes, I see you found socks.
No, they're mine. I've had them on. But I took them off and then I put them back on. My feet got cold. Freezing down here.
It's nice to. I'm sorry for reading chat. See ya. Did you really just do a forehead slap, Kenzie?
Yes.
Don't do it to me. I didn't do
Yes.
anything. I will stop reading the Harry Potter series to you.
No! That's a long book.
Yeah, I don't even think we're halfway through the first thing.
The movies, because the movies you get to actually see the
Yep.
pictures.
Hope you have a good day, Shadow.
See ya!
And see ya.
Oh.
Alright, He put the receiver back down and stroked his mustache, thinking, no. He was being stupid. Potter wasn't such an unusual name. He was sure there were lots of people called Potter who had a son called Harry. Come to think of it, he wasn't even sure his nephew was called Harry. He never even seen the boy. It might have been Harvey or Harold. There was no point in worrying. Miss Dursley, she always got so upset at the mention of her sister. Didn't blame her. If he had a sister like that. But all the same, those people in cloaks. It found a lot harder to concentrate on drills that afternoon. When he left the building at 5, he was still so worried that he walked straight into someone outside the door. Sorry, he grunted, as a tiny old man stumbled and almost fell. A few seconds before Mr. Dursley realized that the man was wearing a violet cloak. He didn't seem at all upset at being almost knocked to the ground. On the contrary, his face split into a wide smile and said in a squeaky voice that made passersby stare, "Don't be sorry, my dear sir, for nothing could upset me today. Rejoice, for you know who has gone at last. Even muggles like yourself should be celebrating this happy, happy day." The old man hugged Mr. Dursley around the middle and walked off. Mr. Dursley stood rooted on the spot and had been hugged by a complete stranger. He also thought he had been called a muggle. Whoever that was, he was rattled. He hurried to his car and set off for home, hoping he was imagining things which he had never hoped before. Because he didn't approve of imagination. As he pulled into the driveway of number 4, first thing he saw and didn't improve move was the tabby cat he spotted that morning, still sitting on his garden wall. He was sure it was the same one. It had the same markings around its eyes. "Shoo!" Mr. Dursley loudly. Yeah. Dogs always scare. The cat didn't move. It just gave him a stern look. Was this normal cat behavior? Mr. Dursley wondered. Trying to pull himself together, he let himself into the house. He was still determined not to mention anything to his wife. Mr. Dursley had a nice day. A nice, normal day. She told him over dinner all about Miss Next Door's problem with her daughter and how Dudley had learned a new word. Mr. Dursley tried to act normally when Dudley had been put to bed. He went to the living room in time to catch the last report on the evening news. And finally, bird watchers everywhere have reported that the nation's owls have been behaving very unusually today. The owls normally hunt at night and are hardly ever seen in daylight. There have been hundreds of sightings of those birds flying in every direction since sunrise. Experts are unable to explain why the owls have suddenly changed their sleeping pattern. The newscaster allowed himself a grin. Most mysterious. And now over to Jim McGovern. With the weather going to be any more showers of owls tonight, Jim? Well, Ted, I don't know about that, but it's not only the owls that have been acting odd today. Viewers as far as Kent, Yorkshire, and Dundee have been phoning in to tell me that instead of rain, I promised yesterday, they've had a downpour of shooting stars. Perhaps people have been celebrating bonfire night early. So until next week, folks. But I can promise a wet night tonight. Mr. Dursley sat frozen in his armchair, shooting stars all over Britain. Owls flying by daylight, mysterious people in cloaks, all over the place, and a whisper about the Potters. Mr. Dursley came into the room carrying 2 cups of tea. It was no good. He had to say something to her. He cleared his throat nervously. Petunia, dear, you haven't heard anything from your sister lately, have you? As he expected, Mrs. Dursley looked shocked and angry. After all, they never pretended she didn't have a sister. No, she said sharply. Why? Funny stuff from the news, Mr. Dursley mumbled. Owls shooting stars, and there are a lot of funny-looking people in town today. So, snapped Mr. Dursley. Well, I just thought maybe it was something to do with, her crowd. Mrs. Dursley slipped her tea through pursed lips. Mr. Dursley wondered whether he'd tell her he heard the name Potter. He decided he didn't dare. Instead, he said as casually as he could, their son, he'd be about Dudley's age now, wouldn't he? Suppose so, Mrs. Dursley stiffly. What's his name again? Howard, isn't it? Harry. That's the common name, if you ask me. Oh, yes, Mr. Dursley, his heart sinking horribly. Yes, I quite agree. He didn't say another word on the subject as they went upstairs to bed. While Mrs. Dursley was in the bathroom, Mr. Dursley crept to the bedroom window, peering down into the front garden. The cat was still there. It was staring down Pivot Drive as though it was waiting for something. Was he imagining things? Could all this have been to do with the Potters? If it got out that they were related to the pair of, well, he didn't think he could bear it. The Dursley got into bed. Mr. Dursley fell asleep quickly, but Mr. Dursley laid awake, turning it all over in his mind. His last comforting thought before he fell asleep was that even if the Potters were involved, there was no reason for them to come near him and Miss Dursley. The Potters knew very well that he and Petunia thought about them and their kind. He couldn't see how he and Petunia get mixed up in anything that might be going on. He yawned and turned over. It couldn't affect them. How very wrong he was. Hold on. Let me see how much more of chapter. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Roughly 5. Mr. Dursley might have been drifting into an uneasy sleep, but the cat on the wall outside was showing no signs of sleepiness. It was sitting as still as a statue, its eyes fixed unblinkingly on the far corner of Pivot Drive. Blah. Privet Drive. It didn't so much as quiver when a car door slammed on the next street. There were 2 owls swooped overhead. In fact, it was nearly midnight before the cat moved at all. A man appeared on the corner the cat had been watching. Appeared so suddenly and instantly you thought he'd just popped out of the ground. The cat's tail twitched, and its eyes narrowed. Nothing like this man had ever been seen on Pivot Drive. He was tall, thin, and very old, judging by the silver of his hair and beard, which were both hanging long enough to tuck into his belt. He was wearing long robes, a purple cloak that swept the ground, and high-heeled, buckled boots. His blue eyes were light, bright, and sparkling beyond half-moon spectacles, and his nose was very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. This man's name was Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore didn't seem to realize that he had just arrived in a street where everything from his name to his boots was unwelcome. He was busy rummaging in his cloak, looking for something, but he did seem to realize he was being watched, because he looked up suddenly at the cat, which was still staring at him from the other end of the street. For some reason, the sight of the cat seemed to amuse him. He chuckled and muttered, "I should have known." Found what he was looking for in his inside pocket. It seemed to be a silver cigarette lighter. He flicked it open, held it up in the air, and clicked it. The nearest street lamp went out with a little pop. He clicked it again. The next lamp flickered into darkness. 12 times he clicked the put-outer, until the only lights left were on the whole street were 2 tiny pinpricks in the distance, which were the eyes of the cat watching him. Benjamin looked out the window. No, even Beady and Mrs. Dursley, they wouldn't be able to see anything that was happening down on the pavement. Dumbledore slipped the put-outer back inside his cloak and set off down the street toward number 4, where he sat down on the wall next to the cat. He didn't look at it, but after a moment he spoke to it. "Fancy seeing you here, Professor McGonagall." He turned to smell at the tabby, but it had gone. Instead, he was smiling at a rather severe-looking woman who was wearing square glasses, exactly the shape of the markings the cat had around its eyes. She, too, was wearing a cloak, an emerald one. Her black hair was drawn into a tight bun. She looked distinctly ruffled. "How did you know it was me?" she asked. "My dear Professor, I've never seen a cat sit so stiffly." "You'd be stiff if you'd been sitting on a brick wall all day," said Professor McGonagall. "All day? When you could have been celebrating. I must have passed a dozen feasts and parties on my way here." Professor McGonagall sniffed angrily. "Oh, yes, everyone's celebrating, all right," she said impatiently. "You'd think they'd be a bit more careful about. But no. Even the Muggles have noticed something going on. It was on their news." She jerked her head back at the Dursleys' darkling room windows. "I heard it. Flocks of owls shooting stars. Well, they're not completely stupid. They're bound to know something. Shooting stars down in Kent. Oh, but that was Daedalus Diggle. He never had much sense. You can't blame them," said Dumbledore gently. "We had precious little time to celebrate for 11 years. "I know that," said Professor McGonagall irritably, "but that's no reason to lose our heads. People are being downright careless. Out on the streets in broad daylight, not even dressed in Muggle clothes. Swapping rumors." She threw a sharp sideway glance at Dumbledore here, as though hoping he was going to tell her something. But he didn't, so she went on. "A fine thing it would be if, on the very day you-know-who seems to have disappeared at last, the Muggles found out about us all. Suppose he really has gone, Dumbledore." "It certainly seems so," said Dumbledore. "But we have much to be thankful for. Would you care for a lemon drop?" "A what?" "A lemon drop. They're kind of Muggle sweet I'm rather fond of." "No, thank you," said Professor McGonagall coldly, as though she didn't think this was the moment for lemon drops. "As I say, even if you-know-who has gone, my dear Professor, surely a sensible person like yourself can call him by his name. All this you-know-who nonsense. For 11 years I've been trying to persuade people to call him by his proper name. Voldemort." Professor McGonagall flinched, but Dumbledore, who was unsticking 2 lemon drops, seemed not to notice. "It all gets so confusing to keep saying you-know-who. I've never seen any reason to be frightened of saying Voldemort's name." "I know you haven't," said Professor McGonagall, sounding half exasperated, half admiring. "But you're different. Everyone knows you're the only one you-know-who, all right, Voldemort was frightened of." "You flatter me," Dumbledore said calmly. "Voldemort had powers I will never have, only because you, too, well, noble, choose them. It's lucky it's dark. I haven't blushed so much since Madame Pomfrey told me she liked my new earmuffs." Professor McGonagall shot a sharp look at Dumbledore and said, "The owls are nothing next to the rumor that are flying around. You know what everyone's saying? About why he's disappeared? About what finally stopped him?" Seeing that Professor McGonagall had reached the point she was more anxious to discuss. The real reason she had been waiting on a cold, hard wall all day. For neither as a cat nor as a woman had she fixed Dumbledore with such a piercing stare as she did now. It was plain that, whatever everyone was saying, she was not going to believe it until Dumbledore told her it was true. Dumbledore, however, was choosing another lemon drop and did not answer. "What they're saying," she pressed on, "is that last night Voldemort turned up in Godric's Hollow. He went to find the Potters. The rumor is that Lily and James are that they're dead." Dumbledore bowed his head. Professor McGonagall gasped. "Lily and James? I can't believe it. I don't want to believe it. Oh, Albus." Dumbledore reached out and patted her on the shoulder. I know," he said heavily. Professor McGonagall's voice trembled as she went on. "That's not all. They're saying he tried to kill the Potter's son, Harry, but he couldn't. He couldn't kill that little boy. No one knows why or how. But they're saying that when he couldn't kill Harry Potter, Voldemort's power somehow broke. That's why he's gone." Voldemort nodded glumly. It's true," faltered Professor McGonagall. "After all he's done, all the people he's killed, he couldn't kill a little boy. It's just astounding. Of all the things to stop him, but how in the name of heaven did Harry survive?" "We can only guess," Dumbledore said. "We may never know." Professor McGonagall put out a lace handkerchief and dabbed at her eyes beneath her spectacles. Dumbledore gave a great sniff as he took a golden watch from his pocket and examined it. It's a very odd watch. It had 12 hands, but no numbers. Instead, little planets were moving around the edge. It must have made sense to Dumbledore, though, because he put it back in his pocket and said, Hagrid's late. I suppose it was he who told you I'd be here, by the way. Yes, said Professor McGonagall. Now, I don't suppose you're going to tell me why you're here of all places? I'm going to bring Harry to his aunt and uncle. They're the only family he has left now. You can't mean the people who live here, cried Professor McGonagall, jumping to her feet and pointing at number 4. Dumbledore, you can't. I've been watching them all day. You couldn't find 2 people who are less like us. They've got this son. I saw him kicking his mother all the way up the street, screaming for sweets. Harry Potter come and live here? It's the best place for him, said Dumbledore firmly. His aunt and uncle will be able to explain everything to him when he's older. I read them a letter. A letter, repeated Professor McGonagall faintly, sitting back down the wall. Really, Dumbledore? You think you can explain all this in a letter? These people will never understand him. He'll be famous. A legend. I wouldn't be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day in the future. There will be books written about Harry. Every child in our world will know his name. Exactly, said Dumbledore, looking very seriously over the top, over his half-moon glasses. It would be enough to turn any boy's head. Famous before he can walk and talk. Famous for something he won't even remember. Can't you see how much better off he'll be growing up, away from all that, until he's ready to take it?
Well, that's true. There's books about Harry Potter, and his birthday is July 31st. I think.
This is November 1st that they're on, Kenzie.
Yeah, but his birthday.
They're saying it's going to be Harry Potter Day on November 1st. Because that's the day that they're, on, I do believe. Because James and Lily were killed on October 31st, Halloween. It's the very next day. They're talking about it going to be Harry Potter Day on November 1st. Not talking about his birthday.
Well, his birthday is July 31st.
So Professor McGonagall opened her mouth, changed her mind.
Is that why Halloween is Halloween?
What?
Is that why Halloween is Halloween?
Explain.
October 31st.
Yes. Yes, it was Tater.
Where?
She's upstairs doing something.
Okay. Well, James and Lily died on October 31st, and Halloween's October 31st.
Correct.
Is that why Halloween's Halloween?
My stream disconnected and then it reconnected.
Due to what?
I don't know, but it ended the stream and now we're back live. Hi.
Sorry.
It just said, fuck you.
Yeah, we don't know what for.
I can understand why. Hold on, let me check. Open performance window. Yeah. It just said stream disconnected. Everything looks fine.
It just did it for no reason, I guess.
That's a lie.
Maybe they just knew you were trying
Hold
to
on.
copyright.
Shut it. I'm not copyrighting anything. I was just reading a book. And I suddenly went live. That's all. I went live suddenly, and I don't know why.
You were streaming. How'd you go live?
I don't know how I went live, but apparently I went live.
Was you streaming?
It still says I'm broadcasting it. That is Discord. That is not what I wanted. All right, let's just finish this chapter up.
And then go let doggies out.
Yep. Okay.
And then continue reading.
Nope. We're gonna end it after the first chapter.
And then can they see me struggle?
Kenzie.
Please.
No. Because I said so. Professor McGonagall opened her mouth, changed her mind, swallowed, and then said, Yes, you're right. Of course. But how's this boy getting here, Dumbledore? She eyed his cloak suddenly, so she thought he might be hiding Harry underneath it. Hagrid's bringing him. You think it's wise to trust Hagrid with something as important as this? I would trust Hagrid with my life, said Dumbledore. I'm not saying his heart isn't in the right place, said Professor McGonagall grudgingly. But you can't pretend he's not careless. He just sent you... What was that? Stop hitting my chair.
I'm not trying to.
A low rumble sound had broken the silence. It grew steadily louder as they looked up and down the street for some sign of a headlight.
You're doing it so hard.
It swelled to a roar as they both looked up at the sky. And a huge motorcycle flew out of the air and landed on the road in front of them. The motorcycle was huge. It was nothing to the man sitting astride it. He was almost twice as tall as a normal man, and at least 5 times as wide. He looked simply too big to be allowed,
Hagrid.
and so wild. Long tangles of bushy black hair and beard hid most of his face. Kenzie,
What?
don't blow into that. And
You want to mute
I'm-
the thing
I'm currently reading Harry Potter to your niece. Is there an issue?
and the stream?
Okay.
It's like 3.
Bye. Be careful.
I got back out. I got back from like 2 hours ago.
Yeah, no. All right.
Stop time.
Shush. Da-da-da-da. And so wild, long tangles of bushy black hair and beard hid most of his face. He had hands the size of trash can lids, and his feet in their leather boots like baby dolphins. In his vast, muscular arms, he was holding a bundle of blankets. Hagrid, said Dumbledore, sounding relieved. At last. And where did you get that motorcycle? Borrowed it, Professor Dumbledore, sir, said the giant, climbing carefully off the motorcycle as he spoke. Young Sirius Black lent it to me. I got him, sir. No problems, were there? No, sir. House was almost destroyed, but I got him out all right before the muggles started swarming around. He fell asleep as he was flying over Bristol. Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall bent forward over the bundle of blankets. Inside, just visible, was a baby boy, fast asleep. Under a tuft of jet black hair over his forehead, they could see a curious shaped cut, like a bolt of lightning. Is that where? Professor McGonagall whispered. Whispered Professor McGonagall. Yes, said Dumbledore. He'll have that scar forever. Couldn't you do something about it, Dumbledore? If I could, I couldn't. Scars can come in handy. I have one above my left knee, which is the perfect map of London Underground. Well, give him here, Hagrid. Better get this over with. Dumbledore took Harry in his arms, turned toward the Dursleys' house. Could I say goodbye to him, sir? Asked Hagrid. He bent his great straggly head over Harry and gave him what must have been a very scratchy, whiskery kiss. Then suddenly Hagrid let out a howl like a wounded dog. Shh! Hissed Professor McGonagall. You'll wake the muggles! Sorry, sobbed Hagrid, taking out a large spotted handkerchief and burying his face in it. But I couldn't stand it. Lily and James dead and poor little Harry off to live with muggles? Yes, it's all very sad. But get a grip on yourself, Hagrid, or we'll be found, Professor McGonagall whispered, patting Hagrid gingerly on the arm as Dumbledore stepped over the low garden wall, walked to the front door. He laid Harry gently on the doorstep, took a letter out of his cloak, tucked it inside Harry's blankets, and then came back to the other two. For a full minute, the 3 of them stood and looked at the little bundle. Hagrid's shoulders shook. Professor McGonagall blinked fiercely, and the twinkling light that usually showed from Dumbledore's eyes seemed to have gone out. Well, said Dumbledore finally, that's that. We're no business staying here. Might as well go and join the celebrations. Yeah, said Hagrid in a very muffled voice. Best get this bike away. Good night, Professor McGonagall. Professor Dumbledore, sir? Wiping his streaming eyes on the jacket sleeve, Hagrid swung himself onto the motorcycle and kicked the engine into life. The roar rose into the air and off into the night. I shall see you soon, I expect, Professor McGonagall, said Dumbledore, nodding to her. Professor McGonagall blew her nose in reply. Dumbledore turned and walked back down the street. On the corner he stopped, took out the silver put-outer. He clicked it once, and 12 balls of light sped back to their street lamps, so that Pivot Drive grew suddenly orange, and he could make out Tabbycat slinking around the corner at the other end of the street. He could just see the bundle of blankets on the step at number 4. Good luck, Harry, he murmured. Turned his heel, and with a swish of his cloak, he was gone. A breeze ruffled the neat hedges of Pivot Drive, which lay silent tightly under the inky sky. The very last place you would expect astonishing things to happen. Harry Potter rolled over inside his blanket without waking up. One small hand closed on the ladder beside him, and he slept on, not knowing he was special, not knowing he was famous, not knowing that he would be awoken in a few hours' time by Mrs. Dursley's scream as she opened the front door to put out the milk bottles, nor that he would spend the next few weeks being prodded and pinched by his cousin Dudley. He couldn't know that at this very moment people meeting in secret all over the country were holding up their glasses and saying in hushed voices to Harry Potter, the boy who lived. Alrighty, there we go.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1's done.
We'll read chapter 2 another time.
Yeah. Yee, the frames have dropped.
Bye.
Alright, adios. Goodbye. I will see you all another day.
Later tonight.
Goodbye. I don't know that. Don't say that.
It's gonna be later tonight.
No, it's not. I don't know when I'm streaming next. Adios. Goodbye.